Welcome to Shelby Stitcher. This is Joan Parker. This is a picture of a quilt I just finished for a friend, and I'm going to show you how I prepared the binding from a shirt. I used the left front that has a pocket on it, and I also used the back. I'm not going to cut through the pocket, but I am going to take a long strip from the top to the bottom of the shirt on the left of the picture. So I'm lining the shirt up, and I'm making sure that the bottom is even with the fold and that the side is basically running along a line in the plaid, but if it's not perfect, that doesn't bother me. I'm going to trim off that little scrap at the bottom to throw away, and I'll put the larger portion in my string shirt bucket. So I'm showing you where the outline of the pocket is, and again, I'm not going to cut through the pocket at this time. I set the pockets aside and use them when I have a block or a square that I need that's just about the same size as a pocket, so I can cut through both layers at once. I cut my binding strips at 2.5 inches, and there you see the first one. I did some calculations before I started this and realized that I only needed the back, which is about 24 by 24, and this left front side. Again, I'm lining up that horizontal line on my ruler with the top of the shirt, and I'm setting that aside to use for another project. And then I'm just going to fold the remaining piece in half, and these strips are long enough that I will get several uses out of them. When I cut 2.5 inch strips, I start by cutting on the 5-inch line, and then I slide my ruler over and cut on the 2.5 inch line, instead of just cutting 2.5 inches off the bulk of the piece of fabric every time. I feel like this is much more quick. Here I see that my shirt is almost 1/4 inch more narrow than 2.5 inches, so I'll put that in my string bucket for shirts as well. Now I'm just lining up those first 2 strips, and I'm going to cut the ends off so that they're square. I'm not going to do that for the rest of the strips because you will see that being that it's a shirt, it has rounded edges everywhere. And once I have the strips cut at a consistent 2.5 inches, when I sew the ends together to make one long strip of binding, it doesn't matter if there's a little curve at the end because it will be cut off. I'll trim it off at the end when I'm cutting off the places where the seams were. And you can see that's the bottom of the back of the shirt. You can see that rounded edge that men's shirts tend to have. I've already cut off the hem, and I do have a video about deboning a shirt, as I call it, getting all the useful parts. And there I'm folding the top of the fabric in half, and then I'm finding a line on the plaid to make sure that it's as close to being square on the fabric as it can be. When you work with shirts and upcycle them into quilts, you're always going to have a few stripes and plaids that are a little bit wonky and off the straight of grain. If that bothers you, you probably shouldn't use shirts because it's nearly impossible to get them all straight. I'm very much a perfectionist, but I do try to just overlook those little idiosyncrasies, and that's the beauty of a shirt quilt to me, is that they're not perfect. And there are horizontal lines on my stripology ruler, and I'm lining one of those up with the bottom fold of the fabric, as you can see there. So I'm just making that edge to be even, and now I'm going to cut 2.5 inch strips the whole way across this shirt. I've done some calculations ahead of time and realized that this is all I need to cut up, and at some point I want to start doing some videos about my bullet journal. Here I'm sewing 2 ends of the binding at right angles to each other, and I'm going diagonally across that seam. I have a piece of 1/4 inch tape on the bed of my sewing machine, and you can see at the very bottom of the picture, I'm pointing there with my finger that I'm keeping that place where the fabrics are crossing right on that red line, which is the line that lines up with my needle. So I sew through that first set, and I don't pin them, I'm just very careful to hold them in place. Then I flip it over so the right side of the shirt is facing up again, and I put another one across at a 90-degree angle, and I line it up with 2 of the plaid lines on the shirt. So I just push that back until that intersection touches my needle, and again I line up the intersection at the bottom with the red line on my sewing tape. And I just continue through with this process until all the strips are sewn end to end. I'm showing where I'm lining it up with the lines of the plaid. When I have different lengths of strips, I try to put a short one and then a long one, then a short one and a long one, so that the seams aren't right all grouped up right on top of each other. And after this, you'll just snip your joins across, trim off that piece that's hanging over the side, and then sew it, cut it approximately 1/4 inch. Then I take this to my ironing board and I sew, I'm sorry, I keep saying sew, I iron the seams open to distribute that fullness across the width.